how was PlayStation made? With the recent launch of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5, hype around the console is higher than ever before. And let's not forget about the absolute frenzy that was the launch of the PS5 back in 2020, with it being so popular in stores that it sold out everywhere in minutes, despite stock being the highest it had ever been, according to Sony. PlayStation has definitely cemented itself as a force of nature in the gaming industry, and for all intents and purposes, it's here to stay. But have you ever wondered where it came from? A lot of viewers today may not have been around back when the humble PlayStation 1 made its foray into the market, or perhaps were too young to remember. But worry not, in today's video, we'll cover exactly that. Birth of Sony. In the wake of the Second World War in 1946, one Masaru Ibuka, accompanied by Akio Morita, started an electronics shop in Tokyo called Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo, or Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation. The two founders brought to the table a vision to create innovative electronic products that would improve and modernize people's lives. In 1958, the company rebranded to the name we know and love today, Sony. Sony, in its early years, made a name for itself for its quality and innovation. It was popularized in Japan for building the country's first tape recorder in 1950, called the Type G, marking the start of Sony's venture into the audio equipment industry. Some other key contributions by Sony include the TR-55, the world's first commercially successful transistor radio, the iconic Sony Walkman, a portable cassette player, and very notably, the development of compact disc, or CD technology, in collaboration with Philips. Enter PlayStation. The creation of CDs brings us neatly along to the start of PlayStation's story. You see, Sony's original PlayStation was simply the name given to a joint project between Sony and Nintendo to develop a Nintendo Super Famicom console with a built-in CD-ROM. This would have been a first for the gaming industry, as before then, all games ran on cartridges. However, just a day after their console was announced at the Consumer Electronics Show 1991, Nintendo announced that it would be breaking its partnership with Sony, opting to go with Philips instead, using the same technology. The breaking of the partnership absolutely infuriated the president of Sony, who responded by appointing an executive known as Ken Kutaragi with the responsibility of turning the PlayStation into Sony's own console that would rival Nintendo. Because of this, the PlayStation is very much the brainchild of Kutaragi, and he's since been dubbed the father of the PlayStation. We owe it all to him, and to Nintendo for breaking their deal, of course. At a tense board meeting in June 1992 that was supposed to decide the fate of the PlayStation project, Kutaragi unveiled a proprietary CD-ROM-based system he had been working on, which involved playing video games with 3D graphics. After being reminded by Kutaragi how Nintendo had insulted Sony, the board meeting resulted in the decision that the PlayStation project would be retained, and Kutaragi and his team were promptly shifted to Sony Music, a separate entity under Sony. Kutaragi worked closely with the CEO of Sony Music to form Sony Computer Entertainment Inc., or SCEI, in November 1993, the foundation of which stemmed from Sony Music, which helped SCEI attract creative talent and assisted them in manufacturing, marketing, and producing discs. From then on, Sony was poised to exact its revenge on Nintendo. The PlayStation project, SCEI's first official project, was finally given the green light by execs in 1993. At this point, Phil Harrison, the soon-to-be president of SCE Worldwide Studios, joined SCEI to attract developers and publishers to produce games for the new upcoming PlayStation platform. After witnessing the success of Sega's Virtua Fighter in Japanese arcades, Sony knew exactly which direction to take the PlayStation, and 3D polygon graphics became the console's primary focus. The PlayStation logo was designed by Manabu Sakamoto. He wanted the logo to capture the 3D support of the console, but instead of just adding apparent depth to the letters P and S, he created an optical illusion that suggested the letters in depth of space. Sakamoto also stuck with 4 bright principal colors: red, yellow, green, and blue, only having to tune the green color for better harmony across the logo. Following a smooth development process, in 1994, rumors began to spread about Sony's planned game console release before the end of this year, and for less than $400. After a demonstration of Sony's distribution plan, as well as tech demos of its new console to game publishers and developers in a Tokyo hotel, numerous developers began to approach PlayStation, likely seeing the potential in the console. This worked well for Sony, as unlike Nintendo and Sega, they currently had no experience with developing their own games, instead relying entirely on third-party developers. Two such developers went on to become Electronic Arts, or EA, in the West, and Namco in Japan, which was keen on being on board as their games rivaled Sega's in the arcade scene. One big factor that attracted developers to the platform was Sony's industry-first 3D-capable CD-ROM-based design that was much cheaper and easier to manufacture than its rivals, especially Nintendo, which still used the cartridge system. PlayStation finally launches. At long last, the original Sony PlayStation finally hit stores in Japan in December 1994, just a week after the release of the Sega Saturn, Sony's main competitor at the time. Sales in Japan were considered a stunning success, with long queues in shops. Sony managed to sell 100,000 units on the first day alone, and 2 million units within 6 months. Before the release in North America, Sony and Sega both presented their consoles at the first E3 in Los Angeles in May 1995. At the keynote, Sega CEO revealed that the Saturn would have an immediate surprise launch at a price of $399. Next was Sony's turn, in which the head of development at Sony simply went on stage and said $299, leaving the audience stunned and in applause. The Saturn's surprise launch actually proved harmful to their sales, as retailers were not informed in time. Sony's launch only a few months later in September, however, sold more units in 2 days than Saturn had in 5 months. Within just a year of its launch, the PlayStation secured over 20% of the entire American video game market. It was an absolute force to be reckoned with, and Sony was unstoppable. However, they weren't done yet. The sequels. After the original PlayStation selling like absolute gangbusters and Sony grossing a massive $2 billion by 1996, a second installment in the PlayStation was inevitably in the cards. In fact, Kutaragi had reportedly started work on a second console soon after the launch of the first in 1994, although the project was shrouded in secrecy. However, in 1999, Sony announced the PlayStation 2, which was meant to be a massive generational leap over its predecessor. It was one of the first game consoles to feature a built-in DVD player, internet connectivity, and backwards compatibility with the PS1. The graphics too were considered best in class at the time, allowing developers to push the boundaries of the gaming medium and create their most immersive games yet, such as Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and Gran Turismo 3. The PS2 is the most successful console of all time, barring none, having sold over 158 million units as of today. Then, in November 2006 came the PlayStation 3, Sony's 7th generation console that competed with the Microsoft Xbox 360 and Nintendo Wii. It was the first console in the series to introduce motion sensing technology through its wireless controller. It also incorporated a Blu-ray disc drive for the first time, with support for high-resolution outputs. The PS3 was yet another generational leap for the series, boosting graphical quality even further and allowing developers to ship some of their finest works yet. It also introduced the PlayStation Network, or PSN, an online gaming platform that allowed players to connect and play games together from across the world online. In 2013, Sony released the PlayStation 4, the long-awaited next-generation system. The PS4 marked a new era for gaming, putting a strong emphasis on social features with its share button that allowed players to easily capture and share gameplay moments. And that finally brings us to the PlayStation 5, launched in 2020. The 9th generation console from Sony had already been hotly anticipated in the years leading up to release, and the drastic change in design language, as well as the doubling down on the focus of first-party exclusive titles, has led to a great performance in the market so far. The PS5's flagship feature is said to be its ultra-fast SSD, which has proven to be so fast that it can eliminate loading times from games entirely. Although this console generation is still ongoing, Sony finds itself in a great position, and the games releasing on the platform today are truly some of the greatest that we've ever seen before. So, there you have it. The PlayStation is a long-running series of consoles that has undergone years of innovation and ideation. It's changed the way millions of people around the world experience home entertainment and will likely continue to do so for years to come. Hope you learned something from this video. Thanks for watching.